Hey guys, Susan Thomas here, and today we're making chunky chainmail earrings. They're going to be a lot of fun. All right, here are some of the tools and supplies you're going to need to do this project. First of all, chainmail requires jump rings. So we're going to be using 18 gauge jump rings in a 10 millimeter, 18 gauge jump rings in an 8 millimeter, and then 20 gauge jump rings in a 6 millimeter. And then in addition to those, you're also going to have a pair of ear wires to go with this, a couple cool beads. I'm using some neat pre-night ovals, some extra wire to wrap that bead, and then some tools. I've got a chain nose plier and a flat nose plier because we'll be opening and closing jump rings, and sometimes you need two tools. And then I've also got a flush cutter just in case. And finally, I have just a hammer and a bench block to finish off some of my pieces. I will probably also grab a round nose plier at some point to finish off my little bead here at the end, but that's probably the only other thing we're going to need today. So get ready to get started. Okay, we're going to get started with obviously some jump rings since this is chainmail. Chainmail is really, it can be very complicated. It's like a mystery. So many people wonder about it. But essentially, if you think about what chainmail is, it essentially is chain. If you're looking at a Byzantine chain, for instance, it's all a bunch of jump rings put together in a pattern and it makes a chain. So thereby it's called chainmail. On this particular project, it's pretty simple as far as what you do to put it together. It can be a little fiddly with how you have to hold on to the jump rings, but it's one of my personal favorite chainmail projects just because I think it looks so nice. It just makes a really nice looking chain. I've seen it done in bracelets before. I pretty much am a kind of an impatient person, so mine always end up earrings, but I love the way it looks with 5 of the links all together. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to use copper jump rings. I actually did create my own jump rings because I knew I needed them to be 18 gauge and I knew I needed them to fit right inside of each other. But if you can get 10 and 8 millimeter jump rings, it'll work just fine. And I've also found that the key to making this work, and I'm going to show it to you so that you don't have to do a lot of measuring. A lot of people who get really serious about chainmail do a lot of measuring and they know all about the inner diameters and everything else. I am not a mathematician. So what I do is I know that for this project, it's very important that the 2 rings snuggle together. And let me show you what I mean by that, meaning that both jump rings, as you can see, one jump ring fits right around the outside of the other jump ring. So see how that just kind of slips right inside there? As long as those rings snuggle like that, this will always work. So, and then as far as the smaller rings are concerned, they just need to just barely fit around all of those jump rings, and you're actually going to fit 4 jump rings inside one. So that's why I use basically 10, 8, and 6 millimeters. So if you were going to try to go down a size, you could go 9, 7, and 5, kind of like that. All right, so I'm just going to bring these out here. Another important thing about doing any type of chainmail project, no matter how simple or difficult, is opening your jump rings before you get started. Now, on this particular project, my larger rings don't have to be open, but my smaller rings do. So I actually closed all my larger rings and put them together, and then on my little jump rings, I went ahead and opened all of those up. So I'm just going to stack my rings, and I'm just using some oxidized copper wire here, and I'm going to stack up 5 sets of them, so I am ready to go with my project. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. So that is one earring, and the rest of these we'll put aside for the other earring. And then I'll need 2, 4, 6, 8 of these 6 millimeter 20 gauge jump rings. Dun, 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 just like that. Okay, we are ready to go. So what you're going to do first is you are actually going to make this top stack of the 2 sets of jump rings. So I'm kind of working on this part of the earring right here. So I'm going to pick up 2 jump rings, holding them stacked together like so, and then I'm going to grab another 2 jump rings, and I'm just basically stacking them on top of each other like that. Then I'm going to grab this open ring, and make sure it's open wide enough, and I'm going to wrap this around all 4 of those rings. And I found that I am not able to pick up another plier to close this up, so I always just close it by hand, and then I'll go back later and kind of tighten those up if they're a little bit loose. But those guys go right like that. Then I'm going to flip this over, go to the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So grabbing this, and I always use a flat nose plier. Everybody's different. You can use a chain nose plier to do this. Some people like to use bent chain nose pliers. I'm just the most comfortable with the flat nose. But you're going to want one that's flat and smooth on the inside. All right, so I'm just going to then twist this closed. So when you're working with jump rings, in general, you always want to twist them open and twist them closed. That's going to allow you to keep the ring the most round when you're working with it. And that's really important when you're making a project like this. All right, so that's what this now looks like. See how it kind of holds together just like that? Then I'm going to go ahead and attach my ear wire to the top of this. And the reason being is because this can kind of pop apart if you don't have a jump ring at the top to hold it together. So I'm going to grab my piece. All right, so now that I've got those first two together, what I did was I attached that ear wire at the top so that I can actually then hold this down so that I can kind of see how it's working. Key to the project is making sure that each next set of jump rings kind of sits on top of the other one. So you see how these two are on top of that one. Next set's going to go on top of this one. You're always going to be holding those two together and attaching them with the two smaller ones down there on the sides. Okay, so I got that done, and I kind of went back and looked at the sides, and I can see here I've just got a little bit of tweaking to do on my jump rings, so I can just kind of fix those up and make sure that they're all nice and tightly closed. All right, cool. So now I'm going to grab another set of the two jump rings, and I'm going to find these two right here, and I'm just going to lay this next set right on top. So you can see it's almost like they almost kind of lay, just almost, I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of those games where people like lay on each other and then they pull the chairs out. I feel like that's how this is, kind of like that. The only thing I ever find difficult about teaching chainmail is actually you guys being able to see what I'm doing underneath my fingers, because it's a lot of things to hold. You can use third hands if you want to, to kind of hold on to some of the pieces if you're doing more complicated chainmail. But with this project, it's simple enough that I feel like you pretty much have enough hands to hold on to everything without using a third hand. All right, so now I'm just going to put those two together. I've just stacked them up again, and I'm going to go right through that little segment between all the jump rings, and I am going to use this smaller jump ring to pull all those together. So just kind of bring it in there, and I went ahead and put my glasses on so I could see a little bit better, and then just twist that closed like so. Drill the ear wire at the top, and then just flip it around. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side right over here. So grab another jump ring with your plier. And some people, like I said, find it easier to use a chain nose plier to do this. I just like the control of the flat nose plier. And since I already have them all opened, I just find it a little bit easier. So then we're just going to bring it through those 4 rings, same as we did on the other, and then twist that closed. And like I said, when you're done, you can go back and kind of make that a little bit more solid. But now what you have is a stack of 3, like so. See if I can lay it down for you guys to look at it, so you can really see kind of what's going on there. Super easy. And it's basically just a matter of continuing to do that till you get to the bottom. One of the things I find is sometimes they can kind of flip over on you and the jump rings will come together. If you'll just push up in the center and flip it back, it should come back into submission, if you will. Okay. All right. Next up, we're going to do that same thing again. I'm going to take 2 more of these jump rings that fit together and pop them once again on top. See how I'm always putting the next 2 rings on top of the last ones. So then grabbing the next jump ring that I already have open and ready to go, find that space that's right there, almost like a little eyeball shape right there, and just bring it in there, like almost like an evil eye shape between those. And then you're just going to twist that closed, and I'm just using my finger kind of as a wedge to twist it closed so that it comes nice and tight together. And then flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Like I said, this ends up, and I'm not a big chainmail, like I don't do a ton of chainmail. I just really like the way this looks, and I do work with a ton of wire. So I think this beautiful burnished copper looks so good. I've actually taken copper, it's bare copper wire that I use to make these, and I oxidized it so that I have a little bit of an oxidized look to the pair of earrings, which looks really good next to this green pre-night bead that I'm using for the bottom. Let's get that bead, or get that jump ring just closed up. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll lay that down again so you guys can take a look at that. See? And then one more. And I did 5 just because, I don't know, I liked the way 5 looked. You could go with 4, you could go with 3. If you're trying to do a bracelet like this, you're just going to kind of continue all the way through until you get to the very end. Just always make sure that you finished off with jump rings at the end to kind of keep things in place, because they will flip if you don't kind of secure those. All right, next up, just going to grab it again, and holding on to that last set, we're going to get one more set of the 2 jump rings together and just place them on top, just like so. Grab one of my little 6mm jump rings, place it so I get that evil eye look between there, and just go between and then twist it closed. And flip it over, find another jump ring. And you can see how much help it was to have these all open to start with, because what happens is you get everything all in order and you're ready to go, and you're going to attach your next jump ring, and you can't because you don't have it open. It's like, then you have to put everything down again. There's a lot more complicated styles of chainmail. I may try to get a chainmail expert down here sometime, folks, and use them to maybe show you guys some more complicated styles, because I'm not going to be able to take you much farther than this. I've got a few others that I love to do, but I may have to do that for y'all, because if you're loving the chainmail and you want to learn more, it'd be a lot of fun to get somebody out here and we could do a video together. Wouldn't that be cool? All right, so now all we have to do is attach that little bead to the bottom. So we're going to use 1 jump ring at the bottom to hold everything together. So picking that up, I'm going to put 1 jump ring at the bottom here, and that is just going to finish off our piece. And also keep things from flipping around, which that is kind of a key right there on this one. This last one can kind of flip around on you, but if you secure it with a jump ring, it will not do that. So that's really just an important skill, or not a skill, but just something to know about when you're doing chainmail. So the final thing we're going to do is take one of these pre-night beads and attach it to the bottom. All right, so to do this last little step here and to attach this bead, what I decided to do was just use some burnished copper wire, some oxidized copper wire to do this. It's 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to make my own head pin, which is kind of a fun thing to do. All you have to do is grab a bench block, oops, I want to squish my little earring there. Grab a bench block, and at the very end, you're just going to want to kind of make a little paddle out of the end of your wire, and that way it will not go through the entire pre-night bead. So you're just going to pop that through there and pull it through, and that should then kind of, see how it holds it in place at the bottom, just like so. You're kind of making yourself a little head pin. Just pull that in just a little. All right, and then you are just going to use that round nose plier to make a circle at the top. Go around it, made it just a little bit bigger right there, and then I'm going to grasp with my flat nose plier and just do a couple wraps here to kind of finish that off. Just like so. Use your flush cutter to clip, and then I'll just use my chain nose to kind of press in that little end. And so this then is going to attach to the bottom. So grasping my open jump ring. So I'm just going to use both pliers to open that up, twist, attach, and twist, like so. And then, ta-da! Pretty cool, right? And then you got your match right there that I made before. and I'm ready to this pair right here that I was working on is ready to make another pair, so I can find another cool bead attached to the bottom. But really, that's a super simple little chainmail project. I think it's kind of fun and cute, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So some of the tools and supplies that you needed for this project, you're going to be doing the 10 millimeter 18 gauge jump rings, the 8 millimeter 18 gauge jump rings, and the 6 millimeter 20 gauge jump rings to pull that all together. I had a pair of ear wires, and then finally you're going to be using a flat nose and a chain nose to open and close your jump rings, a round nose plier to connect your bead to the bottom, and then I'll use my flush cutter, also my bench block, and my chasing hammer to just kind of hammer out that paddle at the end. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys would like to pick up some supplies like the ones I worked with today, check out the links down below. Would you guys like to see more chainmail? Maybe even have us bring in a chainmail expert? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, and we'll see you again next time.